Hi everyone, welcome to today's podcast episode of Understanding Microaggressions and Privilege, where we will explore the complexities of identities and privilege. My name is Catherine Pesachinsky, and I'm going to talk about a story that led me to reflect on issues of systematic racism, microaggressions, and privilege. When Russia launched the invasion against Ukraine, I was disturbed by the actions of the country that majority of my family members live in. I also have a dual citizenship there, and then the situation got a lot of media attention. Then a couple days later, my mother, who has a very strong Russian accent, went to the grocery store, and while she was checking out, a man overheard her speaking and began to yell at her, assuming that she supported what was happening. This incident had shaken me a little bit, but I realized that it was a small glimpse into something much bigger. What happened with my mom was really a one-time thing. This situation made me reflect on how many people from marginalized groups face this type of situation every day. Growing up in a white Russian Jewish family, I know that I am incredibly privileged. My family has never had to face discrimination for the color of our skin. This is a challenge that is faced by many others. In America, African Americans are often targets of microaggressions. Microaggressions are subtle, everyday forms of discrimination that cause a lot of damage on mental health. It can lead to anxiety, PTSD, and lower self-esteem. Microaggressions can take form of people acting afraid around Black people, like clutching onto their purses, making stereotypical comments, or even saying, "I don't see color." Now, some people see this as being inclusive, but we cannot ignore what makes people who they are. Ignoring someone's race does not erase the realities of systemic racism. Instead, we need to embrace our differences and educate each other on the history of racial inequality. The second group I want to talk about is Jewish people. As someone who is ethnically Jewish, I have never experienced anti-Semitism, but I've been questioned about my identity a lot throughout my entire life. And a lot of the time I get comments about my Jewish heritage because I don't resemble the stereotypical Jew. And one time my friend told me, "You're not really Jewish because according to Jewish law, you're only considered religiously Jewish if your mother is Jewish." And while I understood where she was coming from, it still kind of stung a little bit. But even though this kind of questioning is frustrating, it is important for everyone to recognize that this is a very small issue compared to what many people of color face. Racial profiling is very harmful, and so is violence against Black people and other marginalized groups. And the subtle doubts about my own Jewish identity are a reminder of how much marginalized groups are constantly forced to defend who they are because of the color of their skin. Now, as a privileged white woman, I understand that my experiences with microaggressions are minimal compared to many others. My family and I do not live with the constant fear of discrimination. Reflecting on all of this has me more aware of the privilege I carry. I also started to think about what we can do to try to make change. I believe that education is a possible solution. If we implemented more ethnic studies in schools, we can help bridge the gap in understanding and foster critical thinking. The first time I learned about African history beyond slavery was my first semester in college, and I think throughout elementary school to high school, we've really only been learning American history, and all of that isn't even fully the truth. I think that people need to have a deeper understanding of Indigenous people's history, African American history, Asian American history, and many more. This way, people might gain more empathy for these groups of people and knowledge as to why they are at a disadvantage. By shifting mindsets, we might be able to decrease microaggressions and inspire people to make bigger changes in addressing systematic racism and inequality. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode.